Good morning or good afternoon to everyone out there in College Football Nation. My belly is full of bacon and Cheerios. Welcome into the Voice of College Football. Appreciate everybody being here. Thank you so much for joining. And we've got much to talk about, much to discuss. Much is going to be driven by you. You always drive the conversation. I throw out some topics. Of course, there are topics that are relevant, that are immediate, that are timely. There are other topics that never go away. College football playoff, never go away. So anything you'd like to discuss, leave it in the live chat. Taking your comments and questions. I did want to dive directly into the Big Ten's announcement that they are looking into eliminating the division format in the Big Ten and also eliminating one conference game as college football playoff expansion talks ensue. That based on what's reported to us and based on the knowledge that we have of these college football playoff expansion talks, they are pretty ludicrous in terms of the talking points and the bullet points that are hanging up this process. Seem to be quite ridiculous. Maybe that's what's being reported. That's what's being stated. But behind closed doors, there is more to it. Power and money are always the source of these decisions. They are the source, they're the incentive, the motivation, power, and money. So each conference has to evaluate its position, its potential, and what the said or proposed format will do for them or fail to do for them, and what the challenges and the benefits will be down the road, projected. We can't foresee the future. Look how much different college football is right now than it was 5 years ago, 10 years ago, 15 years ago, etc. We've got an Amazon link in the description section of all the videos. Please, when you shop Amazon, and I know you do, not every single one of you, but most of you do, based on statistics, we know this Amazon outfit is done pretty well for itself. That's my understanding. So when you shop Amazon, and I'm not a shopper, I'm a saver, not a shopper. But even I shop Amazon a few times a year at least. When you do, please use the link in the description section that we provide in all the videos. So go to any video description section, grab the Amazon link in capital letters. It will say Amazon with the link next to Amazon. Grab that link, put it somewhere where you will remember it. Help us build the channel. Same shopping experience for you. Doesn't change in any way. Doesn't cost you a penny. Just grab that link, enter Amazon using that link, and you're all set to go. We're on Patreon, folks. Voice of College Football Community. And this is what we offer. My predictions, my weekly predictions, my season predictions, and this past season with the a panel of media, about 12 to 15 media that presented their weekly predictions as well. I know since it is late January and college football season 7 months away, that's not going to do you much good for the next 7 months. I get it. Even though those weekly predictions for me, I got to say, are so valuable that they last you 7 months. I am not promising to make you money. I am just saying that over the course of predicting college football games for 40 years, I would have made you a lot of money. I've not been on Patreon for 40 years, believe it or not. But the record shows, and I will post the record at some point. I'll dig up the archives and post the record, but everything is time stamped. So sometimes you go to those betting sites or those prognosticators and they say 73% against the spread this season. And you're like, okay, where's the proof? Am I going to have to track this guy for 6 weeks to see if he's telling the truth? Well, with me, there is no way to get around it. Ever since I've been on YouTube, my predictions, time-stamped, the videos typically released on Thursday, Friday, and at least before noon on Saturday every week. So my predictions, go through them, look up predictions, MarkRogersTV, boom, right here on the channel, my predictions. And then for the past 2, maybe 3 seasons, might be 3 seasons now, All those are, of course, posted on Patreon and time-stamped right there. So I cannot get away from my prediction record, both good and bad. Again, I am not a handicapper. I'm not a professional. I'm not a bookie. I'm nothing like that. Would not want to be in any such way. But based on watching a ton of college football, I picked the games pretty well. All right, so we've got those, but I understand that's 7 months away. In the meantime, I am working on learning about Discord. So we're going to have a Discord there at Patreon, as well as an insider look at the voice of college football, a weekly live stream per request, weekly live stream. And I'm going to be getting together with our folks on Patreon here in just the next couple of days with the live stream to discuss what's in store for the future, and really a ton of great plans. A lot of it's going to take some time to roll out because we can only do one thing at a time. But we will get there. But for right now, we got the weekly live stream per request. We've got the predictions, and we've got the Discord coming. I've signed up for Discord. I've looked at it. I need some direction there. So if you know anything about Discord, I would also like to get an insider look at the voice of college football, which means basically, if you have any questions about the operation, the last time I did a big equipment purchase, which was monitor, camera, mini Mac, soundboard, those sorts of things, the trackpad and the keyboard and all that stuff. I just sent them some pictures there on Patreon and said, this is what I'm working on. This is what I've done. This is what I've purchased here recently. Thank you for your contributions. It has helped to purchase this equipment. Unfortunately, we're not anywhere close to the point where we're purchasing equipment based on Patreon membership with a legion of 60 over there on Patreon. We would like to get to 600, then 6,000 and beyond that. All right. Shut up, Mark. We want you to talk about the Big Ten reformatting. I get that. We got team channels, 25 of them. Please lock in on your favorite team channel. We've got live streams every week featuring Miami, Florida State, Ohio State, Michigan, Iowa, Oklahoma, Nebraska. Who have I missed? West Virginia added on now every Friday night with Gold and Blue Dude. We've got our conference rankings. Have you checked those out? Not many people are watching those. So I understand not a whole lot of interest in the Sun Belt Conference and Conference USA and the MAC, but our conference rankings are being released. That is for the diehards, apparently. So maybe I'm investing too much work there. Man, the style of content that I want to produce and that interests me is completely opposite of the YouTube social media crowd. The YouTube social media crowd and what gets the clicks is all the speculation. All the speculation. Is Caleb Williams going to go to USC? Is Caleb Williams going to go to Wisconsin? Is Jim Harbaugh going to leave Michigan? This and this and that. And the same stuff that gets talked about every day. And as you can see on the team channels and right here on the main channel, which I try to keep clear for national topics, typically, unless I have nothing else to post for that day, and I want at least one video post for you, main channel subscribers each and every day. Try to keep this clear for national topics, ratings, rankings, and again, national topics that when I dive into things like conference rankings and all sorts of ratings and rankings that we're going to deliver here in the next few months, that's for you die-hard college football fans. Because everybody else wants the 15th video on Caleb Williams and where he's going to go. I personally don't get it, but I've got to serve my audience. Which brings me to, I would like to find the most effective way to determine the fan base is represented in my viewership. I don't know how to best do that except to have everyone, and I mean everybody that can hear me right now and beyond, to send me an email to say this is who I root for. Because I would love to be able to get a handle on, okay, 33,000 subscribers, and we get a whole lot more than that watching the videos. And then obviously we've got subscribers that never watch anything, and every channel has that, but 33,000 subscribers here, 90,000 subscribers on all the team channels put together. Who do these people root for? Well, I can take a guess, but I would love to get the response from the 42 Wake Forest fans that follow us. I would love that. Sponsor. This benefits you. If you sponsor the Voice of College Football, we can let you know exactly how many people you reach, how old they are, all the metrics involving the viewership and the number of people that we reach here each and every day, weekly and monthly here at the Voice of College Football. So consider sponsoring us. Hit me up at MarkRogersTV at Gmail. I will have a whole lot more information for you and how many different ways we can highlight your business or product. All right, on to the Big Ten. And before we go through this article published by Mr. Sheehan Jararaja on CBS Sports, I could have chosen any one of these articles. They all say the same thing. Let's go to the live chat to see what you folks are talking about. And meanwhile, we are simulcasting on all our Big Ten channels. Oh man, lots of comments. Lots of comments. Jim's ready. Lewis, always encouraging everyone to hit the like button. Caveman, Austin, hello. I got my head up in a booty RN. Okay. All right. Caveman. Got my head up in a booty RN. I'll take over the prediction. Oh, maybe I got my head up in a booty RN expert prediction. Prognosticator here. Tremendous. Hook 'em horns, Jeremiah. So my name is Fat Boy, and Chiefs are winning next match. The next match. Which is a common terminology for the NFL, of course. The next match. Got my head up in the booty. RN also likes the Rams. Jose, GBR, good to see you. Alex as well, good to see you. Okay. Servant, Boomer. We've got a live Oklahoma show every Wednesday with Jason Ray of Last Word on College Football. Every Wednesday, 11:30 a.m. Central Time. Alan, I love the Mark Rogers entrance. The suspense is awesome. I'm sure it's amazing. I would only love to be on that side of the internet to take it all in. Alex, hello there, Mr. Rogers. Anytime my name is spelled correctly, that's a bonus. I am amazed at how many people cannot spell Rogers. Mine is the more popular of the two, correct? D, no D. I know Aaron Rodgers got it with the D. But other than that, Kenny Rogers, Will Rogers, Roy Rogers. Can't think of any other Rogers. Buck Rogers. Buck Rogers, I believe, was a D. Hey, Sue. Good to see you. James, Scott, hello to the college football world. Absolutely. Sebastian says, Mark, did you receive any emails from me on? Yes, I will get back to you, Sebastian. I appreciate your emails. I have glanced through the first one. I've now checked out the second one. They have attachments related to your series and conferences. So this is amazing here. So we've got a series going on right now. Sebastian, we appreciate you taking part. Series where we are. So I've devised a system, and I'm not going to go through the entire point system, but it's based on my rankings 1 through 130. In the past, I've done undergone a similar project off season to determine the best conferences and based on the results on the field, not my perception or based on the recruiting rankings or any kind of talent rankings, but based on the results on the field. And not just to say, okay, the Big Ten's 10-6 and the Pac-12 is 6-10 out of conference, so the Big Ten must be better. Of course, there are matchups and there are levels of difficulty of the games. So what I've done in the past is I've only compared and ranked the Power 5 conferences. Therefore, I've only taken the results between the Power 5. Well, a particular Power 5 conference could, of course, have played decently against the other 4 conferences, but tripped up all over the place against Group of 5 teams, and that needs to be taken into consideration. So I've made the process and this project much, much more difficult this season, because what I've done in the past is I've merely seeded the teams in each Power 5 conference, not based on my judgment, but based on the standings in the conference. So, for example, this season in the Big Ten, Michigan would be 1, Ohio State 2, Michigan State 3, Iowa 4, and so on, based on record. And then I would take it from there, and I would say, okay, Ohio State played Oregon. Well, Oregon's the 2 seed in the Pac-12, and Ohio State's the 2 seed in the Big Ten. Therefore, that's a like-seeded matchup. That should result this much weight given, this much value given to this game. But if, in fact, Michigan, the 1 seed in the Big Ten, beat Washington, who was maybe the 9 seed in the Pac-12, well, Michigan should still, in the Big Ten, by extension, be given credit for that win. It needs to have a lot less weight and value given to the Big Ten, because the conference champion should beat a 9 seed in another conference, and therefore less weight also on the flip side deducted from the Pac-12. So we've done it based on conference finish, conference seedings in the past, but only compared Power 5 teams. But we know that there are several, meaning how many Group of 5 teams are better than at least the worst Power 5 team? Kansas. Probably 20. So I thought, this is a good exercise to just evaluate those results between the Power 5 teams, plus Notre Dame and BYU. But now I would like to take it a step further, and even though I've got to make it less objective, objective. And this season, this offseason, it's more subjective based on my 1 through 130 rankings. That's the best way for me to tackle it that I can tell right now. Got something on my lip. And then you can challenge my 1 through 130 rankings. Absolutely. I never said that system was flawless by no means. It's logical, though. Makes sense. It's logical. Makes sense. And nobody had any real issues with my 1 through 130 rankings. They're pretty spot on. So we were taking those and we were applying those to the results this season. And I believe we've released 3 or 4 of the Power 5s, and we released Conference USA last night. We got a few more to go. And then we'll go through those numbers, because I have made a couple slight math errors. The math errors that have been made, even though that they have been pointed out to me by a number of people, which I appreciate. I want any errors that I make, whether those are factual errors or, in this case, something that I don't want to be getting into on a regular basis, math errors that I've made, they're very slight and they will not change once they get corrected. So they have not changed, or they have not noticeably impacted the results of these conference point totals. But we're going to correct the math errors, and we will do one final video in which we will unveil not necessarily what I believe are the conference rankings, but just flat out what the results tell us based on my 1 through 130 rankings. I will tell you what I think are the conference rankings. Bacon, Cheerios need to stay away from each other, and I think I only brought that up because it would be one of the few times that I've had bacon and Cheerios. I got up this morning much later than I should have. I was awake much sooner, and I just didn't want to get out of bed, and I actually dozed back off and got back up a little bit later. And I got a phone call early this morning. I was on the phone for quite a while with a personal call, and this individual was out for breakfast, preparing for a client, and mentioned bacon. I thought, well, I was just going to grab a bowl of Cheerios, but I really got into bacon a couple weeks ago. Not that I haven't liked bacon in the past, but I've gotten away from bacon for years and years and years for the most part. Not that I haven't had any ever, but now here in the last, I'd say month, I've been making bacon almost every day. Bacon and eggs, typically, not the bacon and Cheerios, bacon and eggs. Toast and bananas. The bananas are pretty common for me, Dave, in the morning as well. Yakov 22, we're going to find out the source of this announcement in just a second. Wolf 58 says if the SEC can get away with only 8 conference games, so can we. So let me point out the issue with playing less conference games. It's a fairness and it's a validity issue. Think of this right now. The SEC and the ACC play 8 conference games. Therefore, for every team in the 14-team conference, there are 13 possible opponents, and they only play 8, meaning they miss 5 teams in the conference. The reason you play in a conference is to play the teams to determine the best team in the conference. You can best do that by playing everyone in the conference. Big 12. Now, the Big 12 was not a genius or so credible in a way that they determined that we're going to have a system in which everyone plays everyone. They had teams, of course, leave the league that they fell into this format, but it's the purest championship by far in college football. Say what you will about the Big 12 only having 10 teams and the Big 12 for the span of about 7 years not having a conference championship game. It is the most valid championship of all the conferences. It's not debatable. Everybody plays everybody. Then the first and second place teams play in the conference championship game. They shouldn't even need to do that. They should just say, which of course it makes money and they need to stay on the national map and on the radar and have a conference championship game. So I'm not saying that they should not play a conference championship game, but they are the one conference that does not have to play a conference championship game because everybody played everyone. So when Oklahoma State and Baylor played for the conference championship game, guess what? Oklahoma State already beat Baylor. And they came into that game. Yes, Oklahoma State at 8-1, Baylor at 7-2 in the Big 12, and Oklahoma State had already beaten Baylor. Actually, the conference championship game in that situation is unfair to Oklahoma State. They've already, over the course of 9 games, proven not necessarily to be better because then they lost to Baylor, but they played better for 9 games than Baylor did. They were 1 game better, 8-1 versus 7-2. Plus, they beat Baylor head-to-head. They should have been the conference champions. But there's a conference championship game, and that's great. And it was a great game. I'm just saying that the Big 12 could get away from a credibility standpoint and an argument standpoint. They could get away with not having a conference championship game because it's a legit championship. The ACC and the SEC are the worst. I'm looking for a term. They are the worst in terms of having a valid conference championship. You miss 5 opponents. 5 possible opponents. The Big 10 and the Pac-12, well, the Big 10's got 14 teams, therefore 13 possible opponents, and 9 conference games, so you miss 4 conference teams. And in the Pac-12, make fun of the Pac-12, but their conference championship is more legit than the Big 10, the ACC, or the SEC. 12 teams, 9 conference games, so they only miss 2. So their schedule much fairer and more equitable than the other conferences. At least in the Big 10, there is a rotation of teams in the other division. So there is only 1 game in the Big Ten between divisions that is set to be played because of rivalry conditions every year. Can you guess what game that is between the East and the West? Only one game in the Big Ten, only one series that is continuous. Somebody's going to come up with this, I'm sure. Anyway, nobody. Indiana, Purdue, always play. It's a rivalry. Purdue's in the West, Indiana's in the East, but the Big Ten has wisely protected that game. That's the only game that's protected. There is a more fair and equitable rotation of teams playing in the East and West. First of all, because they play 3 games against the other division and not the 2 that the ACC and the SEC play, plus it's rotated. These idiotic rivalries that don't make sense in the ACC or the SEC are completely moronic. And whomever devised that, sorry, you're probably an extremely intelligent person, but either, yeah. Anyway, there are rivalries that are set up in the SEC and the ACC that don't matter. They don't make sense, and they don't have to be in the format. SEC fans, you know what I'm talking about. If you are Mississippi State, you play everyone in the SEC Western Division. You play a rotation of teams in the SEC East, and you play Kentucky every year. Why Kentucky? Because you got stuck with Kentucky. So why do Mississippi State and Kentucky play every year? Why do Ole Miss and Vandy play every year? Why do Texas A&M and South Carolina? There can't be 2 schools that are further away from each other and that have the least to do with each other than Texas A&M and South Carolina. So you're telling me that if things don't change in the SEC, which of course they will with the expansion of Texas and Oklahoma, but the way things were as of 6 months ago, that over the next 60 years, Texas A&M and South Carolina will play 60 times. They will play every year. It is just mandated. It is just required. It's a must that South Carolina and Texas A&M play every year, 60 consecutive years. And in that same time frame, those 60 years, Texas A&M will play Georgia 10 times. They'll play South Carolina 60 times, but they'll play Georgia 10 times. Dumb scheduling. And I could further break it down, but we're here to talk about the Big Ten. So I got sidetracked. Alan says, like the video. Please do that. We've got 133 on the line. We should have more than 133 likes because we probably had 400 people come through here already. So we should have way over 133 likes. All right. Let me find a good comment to dive into our conversation today. Andy says, I like the divisions for the Big Ten. I think it's the best chance to get 2 teams in the playoff. Okay. All right. Let's get to it here. Let's look at this article real quick. It's a short one. So basically what's going on here is the Big Ten is considering scheduling models that could eliminate divisions and reduce conference play to 8 games. Iowa Athletic Director Gary Barta told the Athletics' Scott Docterman. Okay. Big Ten obviously plays a 9-game conference schedule currently that features 6 division games and 3 cross-divisional games. However, the league could reevaluate. Okay. We've had conversations. One of the things that we're watching is whether it's related to the alliance. Oh, the alliance. The mighty alliance. The mighty vague alliance. What is the alliance? At least I will give them this shred of credibility thus far with the alliance. Because everything that was stated about the alliance initially when it was announced, it wasn't necessarily fraudulent or inaccurate or lacking any credibility. We just have to see if it actually takes hold in any tangible way. It was just vague. And I understand when three conferences that are these massive mega industries unto themselves, even each football program and institution, a massive operation unto itself, come together and one day decide we're going to form an alliance, and then like 10 days later announce some of their tenants. In 10 days, they're not going to be able to be extremely specific. But there were a few items in there in which I believed that they could have been specific, but they wanted to get it out there to counteract all the hubbub about the SEC expansion. And they were probably still working through things. Well, they definitely were working through things, but they wanted to say, okay, we've in concept and in like-mindedness, we've determined that we want to join forces, but we don't exactly know how that's going to look, but it's most likely going to take shape in these ways and affect these sports and be principled in this way. So really what they announced was not impactful unless there's action taken, but it wasn't the joke that it was made out to be, if it turns into something tangible. I stated at the time, and I still can't think of another way besides maybe some financial considerations in which they can grow and advance and increase themselves and become a stronger entity together. The one aspect in which this alliance could hurt the SEC would be scheduling. Think about it. You've got three conferences of 14, 14, and 12 teams. And now you got a Big 12 conference that has stabilized itself, so I don't know what's going to happen with them. But this alliance would be smart if they're going the direction that I think they should go. They would be smart to bring in the Big 12 as well, because this is what they should do. This is playing hardball. This is really playing hardball. Shut out the SEC if they get the Big 12. If they don't get the Big 12, they can't be as hardline, nor would it be as impactful or effective. But understand this. If you let's take the Big 12 out of it for a second, because at the time that this was announced, there was all sorts of speculation about the Big 12 disintegrating and those schools going elsewhere. So at the time, it was the SEC and it was the Alliance. Well, the Alliance has 40 schools, 14, 14, and 12. 40 schools between the Big Ten, the Pac-12, and the ACC. Therefore, the number of scheduling options in non-conference play is wide open. Take Ohio State. I believe we've got a number of Ohio State fans watching. They're a prominent school with a prominent following, etc. So we'll take Ohio State, for example, because their games attract an audience. So if they are matched up with a power team, then obviously the TV ratings are through the roof and it gains attention and it impacts the national landscape. So if those three conferences, the Alliance, shut out the SEC and say, SEC, they probably wouldn't state this. So there's two ways to go about it from a public relations standpoint. One would be to actually announce it. We are only scheduling games against each other. Our complete non-conference schedules will be only versus the Alliance and the FCS in the group of five. But from a Power 5 standpoint, only against the Alliance. We will not schedule versus the SEC. And again, let's take the Big 12 out of it for a second because they were not a factor at the time that this was announced. Therefore, under those circumstances, they are gridlocking the SEC's non-conference schedule. The SEC would have no one to play except group of 5 teams. And you take a major player like Ohio State, yes, they can no longer play the SEC non-conference, but when does Ohio State play the SEC non-conference? They don't. When is the last time Ohio State played the SEC non-conference? It's been forever. I could go through all the years and all the non-conference opponents, but it's been forever. LSU, 1988. Wow. I didn't expect to go back that far. I believe it's LSU 1988 is the last time Ohio State's played a non-conference SEC opponent. Okay. Anyway, that's ridiculous. But anyway, that's, to be blunt, that's pathetic. But anyway, yeah, it's pathetic. It's pathetic on whomever's involved and responsible for that. This is what's wrong with college football. Ohio State, freaking Ohio State, has not played an SEC team since 1988. Ohio State, I got to call you out. That's pathetic. You should be ashamed of yourselves. That's pathetic. That is pathetic. I can't state it any other way. I can't be any more adamant about it. That is pathetic. There's no excuse. You've got 3, and you once had 4 non-conference games per season, and you're not looking to schedule. You've had what is 3.5 times 30 something. You've had 120 opportunities, 120 slots to schedule Alabama, Arkansas, Georgia, Florida, on down the line, all those teams, and you have failed to do so. I know they scheduled Georgia. Georgia's out there somewhere, or maybe that's the one that got canceled. They've got Alabama at some point, but you know what? They scheduled Tennessee at one point. That got canceled. Doesn't count. Doesn't matter. I got to call out my Buckeyes for that. I got to call out Ohio State as being grossly inept, pathetic. That is a bad, bad look. That it's just uncalled for. It's pathetic. Wow. But you've taken all this time for the last 30 plus years. I guess it never really hit me this way because they've played bowl games and postseason games against the SEC every few years. So there's been a litany of those, but they were forced into those games. So in the past 30 plus years, Ohio State has found time to schedule Washington a bunch of times and Oregon a few times and Washington State and Oregon State and Cal and UCLA and Arizona State. They played all those teams, non-conference. Colorado. Wow. That's what's wrong with this sport. And not that Ohio State hasn't gone out and scheduled typically a quality non-conference opponent. Ohio State hasn't gone out of its way to schedule really difficult. They're not USC. USC has made difficult schedules. They've always got Notre Dame, and they're not one of those schools that says, oh, you always play Notre Dame. So therefore we always play a really good team. Therefore, we're not going to play anybody else. No, USC, you know what they do? Alabama, come on, we'll play you. BYU will play you. And they played another difficult non-conference opponent in addition to Notre Dame, and sometimes 2. So USC schedule's tough. Those ACC and SEC teams that already have the built-in rivalry game out of conference, Florida, Florida State, Georgia, Georgia Tech, Louisville, Kentucky, Clemson, South Carolina, they typically go out and schedule another game as well. So Ohio State, middle of the road. I'm not going to knock their scheduling otherwise, or I'm not going to promote it as being, wow, they've really hunted down difficult non-conference games. They play their one. They go get Texas or Washington or Miami or Oklahoma or somebody like that. Sometimes it's a little lighter than I would like. Cal. That should not be the only one that they schedule. If they're going to schedule Cal, there needs to be somebody else. So this live stream not intended to bash Ohio State, but that is just outright pathetic. It's pathetic. Maybe the SEC or certain SEC schools have had a hand in not cooperating in scheduling, but they should say, we're Ohio State. That's the best conference. We need to play those teams on a regular basis. Not every season, but more than half the time, instead of trying to go out and schedule Virginia Tech or North Carolina State, that's where they should be directed. If they want to prove to be who they are, that just hit me. That just hit me, that their scheduling has been that bad. Okay, that's not why we're here, to bash Ohio State. But that's pathetic. That's pathetic. I did bash them a couple of years ago when they did not have a Power 5 opponent. I think that was in 2019. They played Cincinnati and obviously scheduled that game when they did not know Cincinnati was going to be as good as they were, even though they beat them 42-0 and didn't play anyone else. And I would expect that if I would go down in the live chat right now, that I would have some Ohio State fans all over me. But that would have to be, I will leave a shred, a 1% chance that could be explained to me in some way that would effectively defend Ohio State's position in scheduling. But otherwise, 1988. Wow. Okay, let's get back to this reformatting of the Big Ten. Big Ten plays 9 games. They're considering 8 related to the alliance. And I gave you my viewpoint on what the alliance could do. But now that the Big 12 is back in play, the alliance could, without announcing it, just start to fill up non-conference schedules going forward with its own teams, therefore shutting out the SEC. But I believe that the alliance, to make that truly effective, needs to bring in the Big 12 and say, you want to join our little alliance? And then we will all schedule each other. And then what big non-conference games would the SEC have to play? I'll tell you, none, unless they schedule Notre Dame and BYU over and over and over and over and over. I guess Notre Dame, BYU, and the best group of 5 teams, Cincinnati and Houston or whomever, well, they're going to be in the Big 12 anyway. That's what I would do if I was the alliance. I'd say, there's a reason we're the alliance. What can we do to counteract the SEC's power plays? Well, what we can do is just schedule. So we can take, let's just flat out say it, the most prestigious member we have in this alliance is Ohio State. Clemson's up there, Michigan's up there, Penn State's up there, etc. USC's up there. But right now it's Ohio State. Okay, well, we've got a lot of good options for non-conference games. We've got Clemson, we've got Miami, Florida State, whomever else in the ACC who could be good. And if the schedules were actually built the off-season prior to the season, they don't have to be built 12 years in advance. The schedule should be built. And for anybody who argues that, oh, they got to be built and they've got to be scheduled years in advance, why? Where are these stadiums going? The NFL, Major League Baseball, the NBA, the NHL, they can all schedule much more complicated schedules in an off season prior to the season. Why can't college football? So that's number one. I've said this for years, and I've released videos on this, so check them out, and I will readdress it this offseason since we've got new subscribers, thank God, and new viewers. Thank you for being here. That the schedule needs to be built in the offseason prior to the season, not 12 years in advance. Therefore, the committee that builds the schedule for the alliance could say, well, now we know that Oklahoma State should be really good this year. That's a good opponent for Ohio State or Penn State or Clemson or whomever. But in terms of big name brand games, Ohio State, Clemson, Ohio State, Miami, Florida State. There's not going to be anybody in the Big 12. They don't have any brand names left, like big major brands left. But Ohio State, USC, Ohio State, UCLA, Ohio State, Oregon. And yes, I said UCLA. Ohio State, Oregon, Michigan, Oregon, Michigan, Clemson, Penn State, Clemson. You know, we got all sorts of attractive non-conference games for this alliance to build a schedule and shut out the SEC. But again, we got the Big 12 to contend with. They would need to be brought into the alliance. Otherwise, then the SEC and the Big 12 just get together. And although they're kind of strange partners at this point, and that's why the alliance could probably lure in the Big 12 and say, the SEC screwed you. Not blaming the SEC in this way. Texas and Oklahoma approached the SEC. So just to be clear on that, and we've stated that many times, the SEC did not poach anyone. Texas and Oklahoma left and approached the SEC. The SEC took advantage. But in doing so, they built by far the best league in America with 16 teams that's already added to the best conference in America. So the Big 12, it only would make sense that they would have incentive and motivation to join the alliance. Back to the article. So Barta, the Iowa athletic director, is saying, which we're talking through, and for what gives us the best opportunity to have the most success in the college football playoff format. So they're doing this with the college football playoff in mind. So kudos to them. I might want to add that they need to recruit better. Anyway. What we're wondering if we're going to know what the format is before we have to make that decision. So it sounds like the Big Ten, and this makes sense, would want to know what the playoff format is going to look like before they make a division or conference format change. So let's get to the point of eliminating divisions in the Big Ten. And let's clear up any inaccuracies that are out there concerning the disparity between the divisions. Is there a disparity? Yes. Is there a disparity? No. Let me explain. If you take the two divisions in the Big Ten in totality, 1 through 7, there is not a disparity between the Big Ten East and the Big Ten West. They roughly split the games played against each other. The Big Ten West in total is just as good as the Big Ten East. Therefore, you would say, what's the problem? Problem is the top of the Big Ten East is better, consistently better, all the time better, not consistently, all the time better than the Big Ten West. Now, is that a Big Ten East versus Big Ten West issue? Or is that an Ohio State versus the Big Ten issue? Well, the Big Ten East and the West were divided as such for 2014. So prior to that, we had the Legends and the Leaders. There's a reason that didn't come out of my mouth easily. It was such a ridiculous idea. But anyway, the legends and the leaders of this smattering of teams, the only thing that was thought through was that they balanced the two divisions in terms of football power and based it on the results. So they thought that through. But the whole marketing of the standpoint and naming made no sense to anyone. So anyway, we get past that. They own up to their mistake and reformat and restructure, starting in 2014 with the Big Ten East and the West. Unlike every other conference outside the Pac-12, meaning the ACC and the SEC, at least credit the Big Ten with geographically being accurate. The East and the West makes total sense. The teams are in the West, they're in the West and the East. Geographically, it makes total sense, the Big Ten's format. The ACC, no. The SEC, no. The Big Ten, geographically, they're on point. The issue is that even though in totality, the games are generally split between the Big Ten East and the West, the top of the East has been better. They've won all the championship games. There have been 8 Big Ten championship games. Now, it's stated in this article, okay, no West Division team has won the conference in the 8 years since the format was introduced in 2014. The last time a West Division team even played its opponent within a touchdown was 2017. Michigan obliterated Iowa this past season. Okay, that's all true. I don't know that it's that one-sided because, first of all, Ohio State's been the representative from the East 5 of 8 years. So I tend to think, even though Michigan stepped up, got it done this year, and there was a Michigan State win in 2015, and there was a Penn State win in 2016, those were razor close. Those were competitive games that could have gone the West way. Michigan State beat Iowa by about a foot at the goal line. And Penn State had to come back to down Wisconsin 38-31, I believe was the final score. 38-31, great 2016 Big Ten championship game. Now, Michigan obliterated Iowa. Ohio State has won some comfortable wins. Nothing that egregious. So this is a bit overboard. The Ohio State wins over Wisconsin, of course, in 2014 was a complete annihilation, 59-0. Okay, got it. 2017 was a close game, as they note here, 27-21. The 2018 win over Northwestern was a 24-21 game in the second half that Ohio State pulled away. So it was a competitive game for 3 quarters. The 2019 game against Wisconsin, Ohio State was down by 2 touchdowns at halftime and came back and won. So that was a really good game. Not down to the wire because the Buckeyes won by 13. And then in 2020, they were down at halftime to Northwestern, I believe 10-3. They won 22-10. But okay, those last 2 games I outlined turned out to be 2-score games, but they were 2-score deficits. So the games have been closer than what they would appear to be here. Although the Big Ten East has won 8 consecutive games. Ohio State's been 5 of those games. I don't have a strong opinion about, unlike Ohio State not playing the SEC, I do not have a strong opinion about tearing down the divisions in the Big Ten. I'm okay with it. We would have had a Ohio State-Michigan rematch in the championship game this year. Most likely. Of course, the schedules would have been different, but Ohio State was going to beat everybody else in the Big Ten. That would have been the Big Ten championship game a week after they played in the regular season. So you run into that issue, possibly, just like the Big 12 does. They have the potential of playing a Big 12 championship game that's a rematch from the previous week. That happened in the American Conference a couple of years ago with Cincinnati and Memphis playing back-to-back weeks. So if you care, I don't care that much. I think there's some intrigue there. Got a super chat coming in. Somewhere. LW. Thoughts on taking on transfers for 1 year versus losing 1 to 2 who will transfer with 2 to 3 years left, each who wanted to play. Thoughts on taking on transfers for 1 year versus losing 1 to 2 who will transfer with 2 to 3 years left and each who wanted to play, who waited to play. Well, that's a general question about a case-by-case situation. What's the depth at that particular position? What's the talent differential? That's a case-by-case decision. Sometimes you have to evaluate how good do we think this team's going to be this year in competing for a championship versus what do we project our team to be. And these projections are more difficult for these coaches to make today because of the transfer portal than they were 2 years ago. But based on how we cycle, and Northwestern's a great example of this, how they cycle, how good do we expect to be in 23 versus 22? Therefore, is this studded wide receiver that we're going to have for 22 not going to be the impact that we would want them to be because of our circumstance? And are we pretty, though he is the best wide receiver we have, do we have a pretty good wide receiver room anyway? And do you really know? Can the coaching staff know who's going to leave? Not really. They can have conversations. They're not going to know. So you're talking about a question that pertains to various situations. Again, I think the evaluation is to go to how good's our team this year versus how good do we project to be in year 2 or 3? What is the disparity between the talent of this particular player in question versus the 2 or 3 we may lose? Have we had those conversations to gauge their interest? And also understand that beside the quarterback position, every other position is multiple players on the field. So there should not be a direct correlation between somebody transferring out because somebody transferred in. I'm sure it happens, but really, if you're playing cornerback at South Carolina and you're a solid starter and they bring in a cornerback, that might impact your playing time. If that may push you to a third corner position, but you're still going to play a lot. They need cornerbacks on the field. This is in 1975 with 2 corners. That's it. So aside from the quarterback position, and maybe your question was dealing with the quarterback position, then that has to be evaluated. Again, how good your team this year versus how good are they going to be in the next few years? What is the talent disparity between the players in question, and how deep is that position? Appreciate that super chat there, sir. Jeremiah comes in with this. Texas has deep ties to the SEC and no real deep rivalry except OU. I hate this argument of erosion of tradition in college football because of the OU Texas move. I hate this argument of erosion, meaning you don't believe that there's an erosion of tradition in college football? Texas has deep ties to the SEC. Texas has deep ties to the SEC. What am I missing there? What are Texas's deep ties to the SEC? Texas A&M has been in the SEC all of 9 years. And before that, there were no connections between Texas and the SEC other than the SEC recruiting in Texas, but if that's the connection, then the SEC is connected to California. So also one of the newest members of the SEC, it doesn't seem like a new member now, but historically a new member of the SEC, excuse me for this call coming in. I need to decline, unfortunately. I will let them know. Hang on just a second. Deep ties to the SEC. So again, prior to 2012, there were no Texas teams in the SEC. And there were no Texas teams before that in the history of the league. And even the closest in geography and in rivalry to Texas would be Arkansas. And they are the next newest, along with South Carolina, the next newest member of the SEC in 1991. So even they are more tied, some old timers would tell you, to the Southwest geography and those Southwestern teams than to the SEC. I'm old enough to still, when I see Arkansas on the field with the SEC, sure, it's been a long time, 30 years in the SEC. So they're solidified as an SEC member. I look at them as an SEC team, but there's still part of that feel that they belong in the Southwest Conference, which no longer exists, of course. So I hope I responded to your comment there, Jeremiah, as it was written there. Yes, there you go, David. Yes, 1988 LSU. That's the last time. And I would love to go through the comments while I was going through my tirade against Ohio State, because I'm sure people aren't happy with me, but that's how I see it. I see no excuse as being the athletic director at Ohio State. Let's face it, outside the SEC, this is the biggest football brand and the best football program in the country. Clemson fans may not want to hear that, but you've been around for 7 or 8 years at this level. Okay. So the combination of best football brand and program today combined with historically, there's 2. That's Alabama and Ohio State. USC historically, but not today. Clemson today, but not historically. Oklahoma, sure, we'll put them in there too. Also, though, some of these playoff performances just make me wonder about the true talent level and depth of that program at times. But because when is the last time Oklahoma's really, truly played a great game on a national stage against a big opponent in a big spot? So anyway, so we'll put Oklahoma on that tier. I think that's the tier. Alabama, Ohio State, Oklahoma, both now and historically. So if you're the athletic director, Gene Smith has been the athletic director for how long at Ohio State? 20-some years. And knowing how sensitive the Big Ten is about SEC dominance, and knowing that the SEC has been dominant, I don't know why you wouldn't pursue those games. And they have. The problem is they get canceled. So the net result is nothing. The net result is nothing. Eric says, as an LSU fan, I remember Ohio State and LSU playing in 1987 and 88. I do as well. I remember those games like they were yesterday. Buckeyes won in Columbus 36-33 on a last-second play to Bobby Olive. And the year before, there was a blocked field goal at the gun that was a tie game, 13-all. Would love to see that happen again. I was in Tiger Stadium for the 87 game. Eric, good for you. Sue mentions Ohio State, Alabama, home and home. Yes, that's great. That will be amazing. Hopefully, it gets played. Andy, the divisions may not be equal in the Big Ten. Everyone knows the East is better because of Ohio State, but the West is far more balanced. That's what we just talked about. I believe the West had 3 teams ranked this year. Well, ranked by someone who knows what they're doing or ranked by the AP. I don't know what you're alluding to there. I had Wisconsin, Purdue, Minnesota, and Iowa all ranked. I had 4 ranked. How you can separate those teams. Now, when you look at the AP and the Coaches Poll rankings concerning Big Ten Western Division teams, look at Minnesota, look at Iowa, Wisconsin, and Purdue. Look at their results against each other and overall. Try to distinguish those 4 teams. Iowa went 10-4. Wisconsin, Minnesota, and Purdue all went 9-4. Purdue whipped Iowa by 17 points. Wisconsin whipped Iowa by 20 points. Wisconsin whipped Purdue by 17 points. Minnesota beat Wisconsin. Iowa beat Minnesota in a close game. Minnesota beat Purdue. If one of them's ranked, they should all be ranked. I've got them basically ranked in a row. It's that close. Yes, I'm well aware. Thank you for the feedback, everyone. I know you don't know which games I remember and which ones I forget, but yes, I was very invested in those Ohio State LSU games. Easy money. Bama has opened with all Power 5 non-conference opponents for the last consecutive 15 years or so. There is some good to that, and there's some not so good. Number one, they refuse to play on the road. I know that's changing this year. Finally. Oh, my word. Alabama will finally go on campus and play in a hostile environment outside the SEC. Finally. The last time they did that was against Penn State in 2010, 11. Yeah. So, yes, Alabama will play those games, but they have to play in an NFL stadium. Yeah. That's another aspect of all this that's annoying. So, yes, that Bama opening game against Miami and Michigan, Wisconsin, Florida State, USC, etc., West Virginia have been an impressive scheduling by them most of the time. But Duke, seriously, they couldn't come up with anybody better than Duke a couple years ago. And that Louisville team that they played a couple years ago was awful. They shouldn't be. They're going to play just like I mentioned about Ohio State. If Alabama's going to go schedule Duke, then somebody else needs to be scheduled as well. Yes, Michigan did play Florida. And Bama, yes, back-to-back years. Not back-to-back years, but they scheduled Bama in 2013, 12 or 13. One of those two was the Michigan-Alabama. The Michigan route got killed 41-14, I think. Was worse than that. It's one of those games that after about 4 plays, you were like, yeah, this is not worth watching. This is going to be a complete demolition as expected. And then, of course, Michigan had that interesting run against Florida where they played in the Capital One Bowl at the end of the 15 season. Then they played to open 17. So basically a year and a couple months later, they played to open the 17 season against Florida. Then they played again in a bowl game in 18. They played 3 times in like a year and a half, 2 years. And played Alabama, of course, again in the Citrus Bowl. David, I understand who Ohio State has played. USC, Oklahoma, Texas, all at their peak. That's great. That's 6 games in 30 some years. They also played a home and home with Cal, Virginia Tech, Miami when they weren't any good, Washington when they weren't any good, North Carolina State. Nobody from the SEC, nobody ever. You play 3 non-conference games, 4 prior to 2017. For over 30 years, they had 110 to 20 to 30 opportunities to play schedule SEC teams, and they could never do it. Yes. Yes, the other side has to agree. And Georgia agreed and Tennessee agreed. And then they got canceled. Wayne says Ohio State is 0-9 in bowl games against the SEC, so they ain't playing anyone non-conference. Yes, that is somewhat accurate. Of course, Ohio State, that is not accurate. That's you're off by a few games, but so we are never going to allow inaccurate information to get by us as best we can see. And so if we catch any inaccuracies, you've come to the right place here at the Voice of College Football. We will point those out because we want accurate information out there. And unlike the political fact checkers, I won't say anything unless I actually know it to be incorrect. So in this case, you need to look up the 2011 Sugar Bowl. That would be Ohio State beating Arkansas. So yes, the tattoo gate blemished that from the record, but especially in this day and age of NIL and everything that's going on, that tattoo situation and those infractions seem to be even more ludicrous 10 years later, seem to be completely idiotic 10 years later. So, Wayne, Ohio State beat Arkansas in the Sugar Bowl in 2011. Ohio State beat Alabama in the 2015 Sugar Bowl. Your statement's inaccurate. So 2, and I didn't know exactly what the other number was. I thought it was 9. We could count them. They lost to South Carolina in 2 Outback Bowls. They lost to Florida in a national championship game and in a Gator Bowl. They lost to LSU in a national championship game. They lost to Alabama in this last national championship game, and they lost to Alabama in the Citrus Bowl in 94, and they lost to Alabama in the Sugar Bowl in 77. They lost to Auburn in the Hall of Fame Bowl of 89. Lost to Tennessee in the Citrus Bowl of 95. Two and 10. And then if you want to add something that's a bit like under advisement is an arguable point, because as we see on these various networks, the SEC, the Big Ten Network, the ACC, when they add up accomplishments and they highlight the traditions and the histories of these teams, the Big Ten Network, for example, shows Nebraska history like it was made in the Big Ten. It was not, of course. That's Big 12, Big 8 history. Same thing with the SEC in Arkansas and South Carolina, etc. So I bring that up because, of course, Ohio State has defeated Texas A&M in 2 bowl games, the 87 Cotton and the 99 Sugar. So could be said 4-10 against the SEC. So Wayne, you're off on your statistic there. Dog named Brutus, if the Alliance actually does structure this agreement and the Big Ten eliminates divisions, it doesn't mean the game will be affected. Sure. Yeah. Don't mess with that. Yes, I was interested to see people's reactions when I went off on Ohio State. Don't see anything else here. Shut Up, Get Out says, more important to boxing ESPN. Group of 5 schools could join the alliance. Media contracts on the near horizon will challenge ESPN primacy. Alliance TV footprint will attract all advertisers from SEC. Sue, maybe the SEC does not want to play Ohio State. And in some instances, that might be correct. I don't know, except Tennessee and Georgia and Alabama have scheduled those games. Okay, easy money. Let's understand something. When you say Ohio State is a losing record, lousy record against SEC teams, even lower tier SEC teams, no, they don't. Against lower tier SEC teams. That's inaccurate too. So again, you make inaccurate statements, I'm going to call you out. I could go through every Ohio State loss against an SEC team, and they were always playing a team on their level, if not above them. The 78 Sugar Bowl against Alabama. That was a team that won the national championship. Ohio State played a team that split a national championship. Okay. More accurately, they received national championship votes. They finished in the top 3 in the country. So they're playing a top 3 Alabama team. In 94, Ohio State finished 9-4. They played a 12-1 Alabama team that finished number 3 in the country that lost the SEC championship game and therefore a shot at the national championship by 1 point. Then, of course, they played the number 1 team in the country, Alabama, in the 2015 Sugar Bowl and the number 1 team in the country in the 2020 national championship game. Doesn't sound like lower tier. Okay. Auburn was a top 10 team when they played in the Hall of Fame Bowl in 89. Look it up. Arkansas, top 10 team in the country. They played in the Sugar Bowl in 2010. Look it up. Ole Miss, Mississippi State, LSU, the LSU teams that Ohio State played in 87, 88, at least on their tier, if not better, higher ranked teams against LSU. Okay. The 2 South Carolina teams in the Outback Bowl were on Ohio State's level, had better records, the same or better records than Ohio State in the years 2000 and 01 in the Outback Bowl losses to South Carolina. They played Florida in the BCS championship game. They played LSU in the BCS championship game. So obviously those were not low tier teams. They were the number 1 or 2 teams in the country. And the Florida Gator Bowl team that they played had the same record that they did in 2011. And the Tennessee team with Peyton Manning at quarterback had 1 loss in 1995. They were a top 3 team in the country. No, they have not played lower tier teams in the SEC. 0, none. Inaccurate statement, easy money. Alan says Georgia loves playing the Big Ten. I can think of wins and losses there. They beat Penn State about 5 years ago. They also lost a national championship game in the Sugar Bowl to Penn State. They beat Michigan this year, of course. They beat Ohio State in the Citrus Bowl. That was the one game I missed. So that was the Citrus Bowl game, easy money against a top 10 Georgia team. Again, not a lower tier. I can barely find a team outside the top 10. Outside those two South Carolina games, all those teams ranked in the top 10 in the country, usually in the top 5 in the country. So Ohio State was playing the very best of the SEC, very best of the SEC. Georgia has lost a bowl game to Wisconsin. So not many Georgia Big Ten matchups. Got that one Michigan game this year, a couple against Penn State. Split 2 games against Michigan State, actually. Matthew Stafford and company beat Michigan State in 2009, but then Michigan State came back and beat Mark Richt's other team there and Aaron Murray in 2011 in overtime. So don't know that Georgia's that really feasting on Big Ten teams. Not really seeing that. I'm coming up with barely 500 record. They did have a big comeback against Drew Brees and Purdue. They were down 25-0 and beat them in the Outback Bowl. David. Yes. I wasn't talking about USC. I was talking about playing the SEC. They don't play the SEC. Why? Now, this is what's wrong with college football. This is at the top of the list. Scheduling sucks. There is no reason. That would be like saying the Pittsburgh Steelers and the New England Patriots haven't played for 32 years. Or that would be like saying the Pittsburgh Steelers haven't played a team in the NFC East for 32 years. What? LW, Bama's played Michigan, Clemson, Wisconsin, Florida State, Virginia Tech, Miami, Louisville, out of conference under Saban. At Texas next year, Bama plays people. They play them in neutral sites. Bama's schedules have not been extremely difficult non-conference. They play one team out of conference, and they're usually decent. They're good. The only teams that Bama during that run has played that have been extremely good teams, like Florida State was supposed to be a great team. They went 7-6. They were number 3 in the country when Bama played them. Wisconsin was good, like top 20. USC they turned out to be good. Those USC and Florida State teams were about the best teams. They've gone out and played. Everybody does that, though. Everybody plays one team, unless you're Baylor, who never plays anybody. When you say Alabama plays people, then you could say people play people. Everybody goes out and does that. Everybody does that. Also included in that streak is West Virginia and Duke. Big deal. BB Murr, USC, Notre Dame, Oregon, Oklahoma, all lovers, I guess. I don't love them in particular. Are they lovers? I don't know. Lovers? Jeremiah, Mark, Texas might be the SEC when we play Ohio State, so the drought may end. True? Let's hope so. The way it's going, Texas might be the worst team in the SEC. They can't coach them up better than they have. Oklahoma all time versus the SEC is 110-49. Okay. We'll have to take your word for it. Lewis is telling us that Michigan all-time versus the SEC has a winning record. They've gone 26-14. The only team that Michigan has not played in the SEC is LSU. Another thing wrong with the bowl system was the game that Lewis is alluding to that could have been played between LSU and Michigan was in 2018. So you've got LSU, Michigan, UCF, and Florida. Okay, those are the four teams in question in two New Year's Six bowl games. Michigan and Florida had already played twice the previous 3 years. LSU and Michigan, two great brands, have never played. They could have played, and guess what? We would have had a Florida UCF matchup. Florida people, Florida college football fans would have loved that, to see the big boy play the little brother in state. But no, because we don't have a proper bowl system that works out the best matchups, we had Michigan and Florida play for the third time, and then we had LSU play UCF, which was a decent game, but we could have had two intriguing matchups. But yes, Michigan has traditionally played well against the SEC, not recently. Lost the playoff game to Georgia this year. Lost to Bama in the 2019 Citrus Bowl. Lost to South Carolina in the 2017 Outback Bowl. Lost to Florida in the Peach Bowl of 18. Did beat Florida in the 2015 Citrus Bowl. And, of course, got annihilated by Bama in 2012. Lost to South Carolina in the game that is most notably remembered for the Jatavian Clowney shot on Fitz Toussaint, one of the most overrated plays in the history of college football in the Outback Bowl, which was a great game that came down to last like 10 seconds. But before that, Michigan went on a really good run against the SEC. In the 80s and 90s, into the 2000s early, Michigan played well against the SEC. Yes, they did. Beat Florida in two Outback Bowls in 2003 and then a Citrus Bowl in 2007, the year Tebow won the Heisman. They beat Auburn in 2000 in the Citrus Bowl. They beat Bama in a Hall of Fame Bowl. They lost to Bama in another Outback Bowl that was a close game. Yeah, they lost to Tennessee in the Citrus Bowl one year. But Michigan acquitted itself for a couple decades well against the SEC. But the last 10 years have not been kind. They got ripped by Mississippi State in the 2010 Gator Bowl. Antoine says, to be honest, who would actually schedule a hard game, especially if you already play a tight division, especially if you want to go to the championship? Well, all sorts of teams do that. Who schedules a hard game? We could sit here for the next 5 hours and list teams that play. Who played in the national championship game this year? Georgia and Alabama. Alabama scheduled Miami, and Georgia scheduled Clemson. Georgia scheduled a top 3 team in the country to start the season. The year before, Ohio State and Alabama played in the national championship game. Well, the schedules were wiped out, but Ohio State had Oregon scheduled non-conference, and Alabama had, I don't remember, USC. So actually, to answer your question, the teams play in the national championship game. You could go through every year, and they all play a difficult non-conference game. Mindy, I have not looked at Georgia's schedule this year. uh, Keelani, I made that comment at the time that I reviewed schedules in the offseason last year. Louisville played Ole Miss, UCF, and Kentucky at a conference. Georgia Tech, for as bad as Georgia Tech is, at least credit them. They had a few years running there where they played Georgia, UCF. Who else did they play out of conference? They loaded up non-conference. The team that I like to jump on is Baylor. Okay. Servant now lets us know that Ohio State all time against the SEC is 7-11-3. Texas busted. In fairness, Ohio State had scheduled a home and home versus Georgia, but the Pac-12 Big Ten and Conference scheduling agreement was the reason for backing out. And of course, that agreement fell apart. Yes. Okay. Katusa. I love when people act like teams are their own officials. Purdue, Tennessee. Okay, let's clear this up. Was that a bad call? I don't know. It was a tough call, is what it was. That point, and man, I wish I could get Paul Feinbaum on here because he was, and I've got respect for Paul Feinbaum. I think he does a remarkable job. Mostly, he was completely off the rails on this, and he's a Tennessee guy, graduated from Tennessee. I understand he's upset. He was letting his emotions get the best of him because he stated that if Tennessee would have been rightly credited with that touchdown, they would have definitely won the game because there's no way Purdue would have scored the next time they got the ball. He was acting like the game was 3-0. Purdue racked up like 650 yards of total offense and 48 points. There's no way they could have scored. So this is not an example of one of those plays that would have ended the game. When there is a missed call that can be verified as a definite missed call, and it is the last play of the game, then we can safely say that team should have won. This is very rare throughout the history of college football. Don't know where we can really find that. There might be one or two examples out there. Usually it's a play late in the game or a play early in the fourth quarter or at some point in overtime that may have altered the final, but we don't know because, again, Purdue was going to get the football and they had no issue scoring in that game against Tennessee. So the next point here is these idiotic comments about teams robbing other teams. They're not out there playing backyard football, officiating the games themselves. There are officials. Purdue has no impact on the game. They are not officiating the game. Purdue is responding and lining up to whatever the official's call is. So I always hate when people make stupid comments about teams robbing other teams. Jeffrey, in my time, have seen USC play LSU, USC LSU. I don't remember that game. Oklahoma. You must be going way back. Unless I'm missing something. USC LSU. I don't remember that game. Non-conference. Anyway, USC, Oklahoma, Nebraska, Texas, Penn State, Ohio State, Florida State during the regular season, waiting to schedule Michigan. Yeah, USC. Add Alabama in there as well. Yeah, USC's played some tremendous out-of-conference schedules. And, of course, Notre Dame. Ed, Purdue won easily. Keolani, Clemson played Georgia and South Carolina, and in other years played Texas A&M and South Carolina. Easy money. You are dead wrong. Nobody can match Bama's Power 5 non-conference openers the last 15 years or so. First of all, who cares if it's the opener? Big deal. They play the opener. Then they play Mercer, the Citadel, New Mexico State, Charleston Southern. This is Bama's typical schedule. They play an opener against a good team, rarely a really good team. Rarely, they're not out there playing Oklahoma or Ohio State or Oregon or whomever, Clemson in week one. Okay. Yes, I know they played Clemson like 15 years ago before they were Clemson. And then they're playing three horrible opponents. Horrible opponents. Okay. So we are not evaluating the opener just because it's the opener. They're playing 4 non-conference games, and 3 of them are rubbish, and one's a decent opponent. With the addition of the USCs and the Michigans and the Wisconsins and the Florida States that you pointed out, there is the 6-6 West Virginia team. There is the awful Duke team. There is the awful Louisville team that went 2-10. Yes, you know what? There are tons of teams across America that play tougher non-conference schedules than Alabama. Not even close. USC always plays a tougher non-conference schedule than Alabama. And a number of other teams do. Florida State this year plays LSU and Florida non-conference. When has Bama ever played 2 Power 5 teams? Find that schedule for me. That probably existed like in 1972. When I was reviewing disputed national championships, and please check out those videos that have been posted in the past if you're into college football history and the national championship decisions that have been made, then check out those videos. Just type in 1983, 84, 90, 91, 96, 2000. I've looked at those seasons, and check out our disputed national championship videos. There was a reason I brought that up. Okay, here we go. A dog named Brutus says, when is Alabama scheduled a Big Ten team? Michigan, Wisconsin. Michigan in 12, Wisconsin in 15. They had a game against Michigan State. Michigan State canceled. Who am I missing here? Michigan, Wisconsin. There's 2 in the last 8 or 9 years. Penn State back-to-back in 10 and 12. Alabama's scheduled 5 Big Ten teams in the last 10 or 11 years. I believe we've got a super chat that I did not get to. Let me track this down. Got a couple coming in. Appreciate that. Ryan, good to see you, sir. What are your thoughts on the most recent changes to the 2022 schedule? Only one SEC school on it, Penn State Auburn. Well, the changes made to the Big Ten schedule only had to do with conference scheduling because, of course, those non-conference schedules and those non-conference opponents have to be scheduled out 12 or 13 years in advance because there's no way to ever be able to coordinate a college football game that's not scheduled at least 12 or 13 years in advance. So, Ryan, keep in mind that those scheduling changes were only to Big Ten games. And they were very minor scheduled changes. And most of them were in response to the scheduling impact from the COVID year of 2020. So, for example, the Michigan State venue changed. Ohio State only changed in regards to the Wisconsin game was moved up. There was really nothing that struck me as being impactful in those scheduling changes whatsoever. I can't even recall them. I posted a video. So there's a video post on it. So you can look that up. I apologize that I don't have any immediate response because nothing was significant in those scheduling changes. Now, in terms of the non-conference schedule for the Big Ten, yes, there was only one game, I believe, against the SEC. As Ohio State plays Notre Dame. Michigan, I don't know what they're... Oh, Michigan's schedule this season, Michigan fans. I think part of what spurs and ignites arguments in college football circles is people are too sensitive and they feel like they have to defend their team. And their teams, for example, if somebody had ranted and railed on Ohio State scheduling over the past 30 years to me, like I just did to all of you, I'd be like, you know what? You're right. You're right. They have scheduled a difficult opponent. I'll defend that, but they have not scheduled the SEC when they should be playing the SEC. It's not under my control. I don't have anything to do with it. They're my team, but I think too many people out there are too sensitive and too defensive concerning their team. You don't control what the players do. Like people feel like if their coach or a player on their team goes and does some horrible act that they've got to defend them. No, you got to call it for what it is. I don't defend Urban Meyer's stupidity in his foolish displays, the dumb things that he's done and the immoral things that he's done, if there have been. I still say he's a great, great football coach, one of the very best of all time. That has nothing to do with that, but I'm not responsible for him. When there are Ohio State players that are alleged to do this or that, or it's proven that they did this or that is a violation of women or any type of reasonable behavior, conduct, treat them like they should be treated with justice and fairness. Doesn't matter if they play for Ohio State or Texas A&M or USC, whoever they play for. I want justice to be served. I think people try to defend, like if we had a Baylor, I don't know that we have any Baylor fans watching. I wish we did. If you're a Baylor fan watching, we've only got about 200 in the chat, so the odds are that we don't have one watching right now, but we'll have a couple thousand views on this video. Hopefully a Baylor person can step up and say, Mark, I watch you all the time. I'm a Baylor fan. I rail on Baylor and their pathetic scheduling. That doesn't mean their fans are bad people. They're not responsible for their scheduling. So you don't need to defend it. That's what I find amusing about sports fans. It's like when they show a replay after a play is being reviewed, people are watching with their emotions. Most people are watching with their emotions. So if it's a Florida-Georgia game and there's a controversial call and they're reviewing it, if you would poll the Georgia fans, they would side toward Georgia. They would be watching that play through the lens of a Georgia fan, and the Florida fans would be doing the same. The actual poll should show that it's ambivalent to who you root for as to how you see the play. But that's not how we humans function. We're biased about everything and emotional. And when it comes to football, kind of who cares? It's just entertainment. But this affects more important issues in society that people are being emotional about and they're not being reasonable and logical about. So, Ryan, you got a whole lot more than you bargained for when you asked me that question. But yeah, there's only one SEC game between the Big Ten and the SEC. That would be Penn State and Auburn, as Penn State will travel to the Plains. So, my thoughts about the changes to the 22 schedule is that they were insignificant. And I did post a video on that. So you can watch the video in which I talk about the things in the video being insignificant. LW. I guess my point, Gibbs transfers to Bama. Jahmyr Gibbs, the running back from Georgia Tech for 1 year. Now 5-star Kamar Wheaton that has 3 to 4 years left transfers out. Same with Burton. Okay. Well, you're talking about Alabama, LW. They can make all sorts of running back decisions, signings, transfer portal signings. Kamar Wheaton, okay, he's a young man who appears to be emotional and, again, illogical and just left the program. Okay, that's a stupid, irresponsible thing to do. But he's a 17 or 18-year-old kid. Hopefully he learns from that and matures and understands the errors in his ways. He has every right to transfer, but he did it in a very immature, foolish, and irresponsible way. Hopefully he'll learn from that. Looks like Alabama's actually in better shape without him. They will do fine. They are able to attract super talented players who are actually mature and team-oriented guys. So Michael's making the point that by taking away the division, and eliminating a conference game down to 8, you could have, it's very unlikely. I got to figure this one out. The chance that you have more than one undefeated team, well, you've got a conference championship game. So could there be a situation without divisions? So that would be a messy situation. But I just can't imagine that the scheduling would work out that way where you would have 3 undefeated teams and only 2 could make the conference championship game. I guess it's possible. It's possible. Take the ACC and the SEC right now, take how they schedule, take away the divisions. It could happen. Multiple undefeated teams. Double X buckets for life. Good to see you. Appreciate it. Stephen, thank you so much for the contribution with the super sticker. Thank you so much for that, Stephen. Appreciate you being here. Cyber Cabal. I usually don't answer these questions. I call them Google questions. Steve McNair played at Alcorn State. His last season was 1994. Ed Rogers says, I'm transferring to Buckeye Scoop. That's a great place to go, Ed. We've got our boys, Tony Gerdeman and Kevin Noon. They do a phenomenal job on our Ohio State show here every Wednesday at 1:30. Hopefully all of you check in on that. Jose says, one of the biggest losses in college football is the fact that Nebraska does not play Colorado or Missouri every year like they used to. Those games were always the best. Okay, that's your perspective. I don't really, Colorado to a certain extent. I would think you would say Oklahoma. That's the rivalry game that has been robbed of college football fans, and one of the reasons why those two schools got together to schedule the home and home these last 2 years. Jose asks if Notre Dame is going to join a conference anytime soon. No. We'll see what their response is if there's a college football playoff format that comes out, as was proposed last summer, that says you need to win a conference to get a bye. I don't know if that's going to move them or not. Am I still out of focus? That was a long time ago. I'm being told I was out of focus. Well, it's on autofocus, so if I'm not squared up on the shot, then it's going to focus on something behind me. I don't know if that I did not see that myself. We've got Jeremiah who says, Mark, Texas has ties to the SEC by unplayed rivalry with LSU, old rival of Arkansas, and a rival of A&M and Tennessee. Easy new rivalry. Plus, we have OU. What's lost with leaving the Big 12? Bedlam, really? Okay. All right. So you're talking about the University of Texas has ties to the SEC. I don't understand the unplayed rivalry, but yes, Texas A&M, of course, in Arkansas. Yes. Ties to, yes, those two schools in the SEC. Gotcha. Can you imagine, Jerry the actor, if Caleb Williams signs to play at Wisconsin and Iowa does nothing? Iowa has an atrocious offense that finished in the bottom 20 or 25 in every conceivable ranking in offense this year. And the two main culprits were the offensive line and the quarterback play. They need to go get a quarterback. And they apparently won't do that. And this is where Kirk Ferentz is conservative to a fault. Conservative to a fault, and why he will be an 8-4 coach at Iowa forever. All right, let's get down to the bottom of this chat and see what you guys are talking about. All right, so the bottom line with this Big Ten situation is they play 9 conference games. They're contemplating moving that to 8 conference games. They're contemplating eliminating the divisions because of the imbalance between the East and West. And also because depending on how they approach scheduling, they could possibly prop up the perceived contenders to give them better records, potentially with easier in-conference schedules. I don't think that's going to happen, though. The East and the West are equal top to bottom, but the East is better at the top. Therefore, the championship game winner comes from the East, and it's been a consecutive years. Maybe we'll take a poll. Let's do that. I'm going to take a poll on Twitter and on our community page to see if the Big Ten should abolish the divisions or stand pat with the divisions. I got to tell you, I don't have a strong preference in this one. I do not have a strong preference. I would love to be able to speak with a Big Ten athletic director or the conference commissioner for them to explain how they believe this is going to set them up better for a playoff. I understand freeing up the one non-conference game for the alliance sake and being able to schedule more attractive non-conference games between alliance members. Because if this alliance does not shut out the SEC, then what good is it? From a scheduling standpoint, from a scheduling only standpoint, because these teams, these schools can schedule whomever they want anyway. So what is stopping teams from the Big Ten, the ACC, and the Pac-12 from scheduling games against each other anyway? They already do that. So there we are. Later tonight, we will be live on the Miami channel for Hurricanes Live at 8 o'clock Eastern Time. And then I will be here to take your phone calls throughout the weekend. So please subscribe to the channel, hit the bell for the notifications to know when we go live, because I plan on going live several times between now and Monday. So through Thursday, Friday, Saturday, Sunday into Monday, we will be here live to talk college football with all of you. The conference ratings and rankings will continue to churn out. Next series is going to be on Heisman contenders and dark horses. And I have a number of other ideas that I am going to tear into here soon on college football analysis. Appreciate everybody being here. Please check out the videos. Please like, share these videos out on social media. Subscribe right here, the Voice of College Football. I appreciate all of you for being here, talking college football with me. See you next time.